And, you know, my relationships were up and down. And I think part of it is just all the effects of some of the things I saw as a child. And when I met the young lady I'm with now, which I was trying to say, she's very balanced. She's very patient. She's very gentle. She's been very patient with me, and she's held me accountable. And she's taught me to look at my own dysfunction. Someone said, well, why didn't you go to counseling? Like I said to you earlier, Art, I thought I was a cool guy. I didn't think I needed counseling. So she helped me understand, because she's all love. And I know people are not into astrology, some people are, but she's a Scorpio, Pisces, Cancer, all the water signs, and she's very gentle. And I'm a little older than her, a lot older, but she's way more mature in a loving relationship than I am. And sometimes you can't elevate. That's like even in anything we do. If we're talking about money and we meet somebody who's a billionaire, they can help us understand how to get to that level. So she helped me by holding me accountable, by being patient with me, by talking to me, by helping me understand my childhood and some of the dysfunction, how to be a better man inside of a balanced romantic relationship. That's what I was trying to say. And I think a lot of people came to the page and took it out of context. And I got upset because the gentleman said to me, well, it seems like you would have learned how to love in a romantic relationship before you got 65. And I said, you can't do that unless you meet someone who's on another level that's able to help you elevate. And how do you elevate? You have to listen. You have to own your mistakes. You have to hold yourself accountable. You have to apologize. Apologizing without correction of behavior are just loose words. So all of that got mixed up in the context.
Oh, okay. So that's what triggers you.
What triggered me is he kind of came at me like, man, you should have learned that way before you did. And I'm like, dude, you know, I've been with, you know, I've dated and lived with, I was married. If whoever your significant other, if it's a guy to a girl or a girl to a guy, if they're not on that next level where they know how to be patient, how to love, how to be gentle, to watch, my tone was off. Man, I was in and out all hours, you know, doing my work, but then hanging out and I'm, you know, being settled. It takes a lot of discipline. And then we don't talk about dopamine and oxytocin, which I'm not going to get into right now. But if anybody's out there, do your research on oxytocin and dopamine. Dopamine is in the pleasure center of a man's brain, and it rules drugs, drinking, alcohol, sex, all of that. And then I'm an entertainer, a well-known entertainer. Back in the Hollywood days, I was making a lot of money, so I was out of the house 80% of the time. It's a hell of a lifestyle to handle. I know I said on the last podcast that I probably should have built my career by itself as opposed to being married, trying to build a career inside of my marriage. And, you know, I made a lot of mistakes and didn't have any idea that a lot of it had to do with coming out of my dysfunction. And so it got all mixed up in the context.
Yeah, in this same interview, you stated that, you know, and it was real profound too, but you stated that, you know, when you hurt somebody, where you lead them is where they stay. And I thought that was real profound, man.
Okay. So they took that. I was joking when I said I just became monogamous yesterday. That was a joke. You know, when you're an entertainer and you're on the move, and you in one town doing a movie, and then you're out of the country doing a movie, or you in LA and now you're in Atlanta, and then you're in DC, you might be in Houston, you might be in Vancouver, you might be in Toronto. When I was married, I didn't know how to handle all of that. And I didn't do a great job. When I met my girl, I was better, but I still wasn't where I needed to be in a loving and balanced relationship. i.e. handling all the outside temptations, watching my tone, watching how I, you know, my late hours, hanging out with the fellas and not getting home at a reasonable time, hanging out at the casino, drinking, all those things I own. And not that I hurt her like with other women, it's my tone was off. She asked me something, I'd snap. What we do is we play out what we see our parents do. If you really want to know, a lot of us didn't see happy marriages. I'm not making an excuse. I'm saying if you do your research, a lot of people are struggling right now with loving relationships, whether it's marriage or just dating, because a lot of us are still learning how to really navigate through that. One of the books that helped me was a book called Love by Dr. Leo Buscaglia. He wants to teach love classes in the first grade. So yes, I don't think it's as much as my any kind of infidelity as opposed to how I was moving. Sometimes she'd wake up and say, "What are you doing?" "I'm in the bathroom on my phone." Now I could have been looking at the news or something, but it looked like I might have been texting another woman. Sometimes I come home and I might call one of my partners, but if you look through the blinds and you see me in my big truck, it looks like I'm sneaking. And I had to learn how to move, how to be accountable. And in that way, I caused a lot of pain. And a few other things in there that I'm not going to go into. But she was patient enough because I think she saw my heart. And I tried to explain to her the lifestyle that I led before I got to Atlanta, And I think she has been patient with me. I think she's helped me understand how to move, how to be accountable. Even when we're out sometimes, I think we went to the film festival, and when I receive my fans, sometimes it's females, sometimes it's guys, and sometimes I'm not with security, and I give them a lot of time and a lot of attention. And she's like, "Baby, I know you have to receive your fans, but I'm standing here for 10, 15 minutes. I had to learn how to listen and grow." And that's what I was trying to say. And I think when you meet the right man or right woman whose brain is in the right place, because a lot of times, and I'm gonna stop here, Art, but I think people get it twisted why men and women like each other. Men like respect. It's not about looks. It's not about the intimacy. It's about respect. It's about being gentle. It's about holding yourself accountable. It's about helping me hold myself accountable, me holding myself accountable, learning to communicate. I talked to a gentleman on the plane once who'd been a white guy. He was his wife. And they were kissing and hugging. They were like in their 80s, Art. And when his wife went up to go to the bathroom, I turned to him and I said, "Listen, you guys been together?" He said, "Oh yeah, we've been married 55 years. I said, 55 years? I said, "What's the secret?" He said, "The secret is building a friendship and communication." He said, "It's 95% communication." So, and to wrap this up, and I hope everybody understand what I'm saying, I'm not making any excuses. I've dated a lot of beautiful women, a lot of women who are really smart. This young lady just happens to be different, and her brain is different. She listens. She holds herself accountable. If she's off, she apologizes. She's helped me learn how to do those things that I didn't learn, coming up as a kid, as a teenager. I didn't see that in my home. So one of the things that happened when I came out of my marriage and I was angry and I was pointing fingers, this is another book that when I lecture, I teach from. It's called The 12 Steps of Forgiveness. And that book talks about any relationship you've been in romantically, you see red flags. But what happened is you kind of go past those red flags for a lot of different reasons. Most of the reason is most people are intimate very fast, within 6 months, and they don't build that friendship. And lust can blind you to that friendship. So now a year or two later, you in love with a man or a woman that you don't even know. So one of the adjustments I made after I read that book, The 12 Steps of Forgiveness by Paul Ferrini, is I decided with the young lady I live with now, and I've been with her 10 years, tomorrow exact, is I took a whole year before I was intimate. We went on a cruise. We built our friendship. And it's been the most different thing that I've ever done. And sometimes we treat our friends better than we treat our mates. So, it's a lot of, and I have a movie I want to do called The Price of Love that kind of tackles all of this, because it's real interesting, because people are suffering out there trying to figure out how to romantically love each other. And until we figure all that out, how do black men love black women or black women loving black men? It's always going to be up and down, because we have to deal with our trauma from our childhood, and we have to meet people that can help us elevate. And then we have to be able to listen and hold ourselves accountable. We have to apologize. We have to fix behavior. There's a lot of stuff, huh, Art?
Yeah, that's a lot. But what kind of lifestyle was you living before you moved to Atlanta?
Well, I said it on the last podcast. I was living in LA. And when I first got to LA, man, I was broke. I remember my manager asked me in 1993, she said, "Do you want to be rich?" I was like, "No, I just want to act." She said, "Well, I want to be rich." And, I come out of the hood, man. My dad had a 4th grade education. My dad never went to a bank, man. My dad hid all his money under the mattress. So I didn't know anything about credit or how to handle money. And then as my career grew in Hollywood, I started making a lot of money. And like I said in the podcast, I lost about 10 million. If my wife had been the best wife, I still would have messed it up. The real issue is, it's so competitive. Not just Hollywood, but I will say Hollywood is competitive. But even coming out of theater in New York, nobody pulls you aside and teaches you how to handle fame. Nobody pulls you aside and teaches you how to handle money. We can look in the media today and see entertainers, ball players, politicians going down because it takes a lot of discipline. And it's a tricky kind of lifestyle. And I got caught up in a lifestyle where I was gambling, I was drinking. I just had to go to the doctor and get on my test. When I met my girl, I was smoking 7 Black and Miles a day. I just lost 64 pounds in the last 4 years. I'm a vegan now. I had to really listen to her and bring it in. And in LA, I was moving so fast, I couldn't bring it in. And it's just a tough lifestyle.
And speaking of your ex-wife, I heard you say that, she'll get mad at you because you wouldn't put money aside for the kids.
Well, what happened is, because of my lifestyle, not having a great role model as a father, one of the things that I have to own that she was right about. At the time, it didn't feel like she was right, but as I've had a chance to heal and think about everything, I left a lot of money out in the streets, partying, gambling, flying women in, hotels, drinking, treating everybody. And some of that money should have been set aside for my son and my daughter. And I agree with her on that. When my children ask me for money now, I have it. But if I had gotten any guidance through this, and that's what I'm saying, it's very important for people to understand, nobody guides you through this. Nobody. And you got to learn as you go. And when you come from the streets or come from the hood and you don't know how to manage money and you can't handle all the outside pressures of fame, it's going to overtake you unless you are just really, really grounded and centered. And I left a lot of money, 200,000 or 300,000 out in the streets, just having a great time, where 100 or 200,000 should have been set aside for my kids and their education, if they need something even at this point. And that's something that I agree with her on. But we also, when we talk about that, the biggest issue, Art, is nobody knows why. Nobody talks about the why. Because unless you walk in my shoes, you can't tell me how you would handle it. And that's men or women. And if you look at the history of Hollywood, some people have been married 8 or 9 times, paying a lot of money in child support. I'm not going to call any names, but I understand it, and I don't throw stones. What I try to do is understand and do better, because it was a hell of a ride, and I had a hell of a ride. That's all I can say.
Let me ask you this. Was it hard for you to deal with all the women that was, coming on to you when you was in your prime? And even now, I'm sure you get, groupies that, come on to you now.
Man, I'm still processing a lot of stuff that I went through. When you're in the entertainment business, I have a big personality. For the people who really know me privately out there who might be watching, I have a big personality. Back in the 70s and I would say the 80s, I would say the 90s, I was cut up. I was sharp. I had to cultivate my look. I had gaps in every one of my teeth. I had to get back in my day, we call it the blowout kit, but I had to get the curl and texturize my hair because this guy said my hair was so beady, looked like a rabbit shitting on my head. And that's, if you ever seen Little Rabbit Pellets, they talked about me like a dog when I was a kid because, being dark skinned, the women talked about me back in the day before, the turn of the civil rights movement and beyond. If you were my complexion, it was like you had the plague. So I wasn't prepared for the attention that I got. And then there's some people just drawn to your energy. I was sharp. I kept myself sharp. If you have a picture of me on rock, I'm dark, I'm sharp, got my hair's faded, and that attracts women, and then, I start making the money. All of that lifestyle is attractive to women, men and women. And, I didn't handle it well. And I'm one to say, it would have been easier had I not tried to build that inside of my career. If I wasn't married, me moving around, me having fun, it wouldn't have been a big issue. But trying to do that inside of your marriage is very difficult. And I think I made that clear. I don't blame my wife one iota, my ex-wife. Has she been the best, perfect wife in the world and she has her own stuff, I still would have messed it up. And I think the only way you grow is to understand why it happened, how it happened. And, we heard of groupies. They're everywhere, And then there are some legitimate women who I've met who really like you, or attracted to you, or like your personality. So it's a lot to handle as we see things unfolding in the media right now. And we see, and just so you know, do your research, the divorce rate in Hollywood is about 97 to 98%. So it's a tough business to have a stable relationship in.
So in a sense, you had issues with groupies then coming on to you.
I don't think I have an issue with a groupie. I don't think I had an issue with groupies. It's just when you do, like when we did rock, you come off the set, man, it's like 25 women waiting to meet you, and Charles Dutton and all of us. When I go on the road to do a play, you go out and take pictures. It's always about 5 or 6 girls like, hey, Mr. Cliff, hey, Shamar. It's a lot, man. I did the Cali Love video. I'm coming, Tupac, Chris Tucker. You go back to the hotel, there's 100 women outside the hotel. You got to be grounded, man. You got to be disciplined, and we're not talking to no underage stuff. So please don't misquote me. I'm talking about grown adults, I don't condone anybody, because I have a daughter and I have a son and I have a stepson, and I don't condone anybody that crosses the line with young people. But I'm talking about older women, younger women, 25, 30, 35. Some of the older women, there's some young women that just like older guys. So it's a lot to handle. And I'm grateful that I'm out of that period.
And you said when y'all was done with the Cali Love video, it was a lot of women back at the hotel. Man,
Tupac was in Cali Love. You know who Tupac was, right? So, I don't know, man, because I wanted to be a football player. I never even imagined, even talking to you right now, I feel like I'm stuck in a dream. I never saw any of this for myself. Nobody gave me any guidance. Nobody helped me understand money, credit. At the height of my career, Art, I was making a lot of money and my credit score was like a 525, and the pitfalls of this business is when I came down here 10 years ago, I was homeless. People don't know it because I don't talk about it. My divorce, all the gambling, I ran out of money. I was homeless. I left, my marriage, and I was homeless. And I came down here. Luckily, I did Saints and Sinners for 6 seasons, helped put me back on my feet. And I pay homage to my friends who've helped me along the way. They know who they are. And I say this to my girl: put $10,000 in my pocket when I had no money. And in my first season of Saints and Sinners, I wasn't making a lot of money, but it was better than no money. And luckily, thanks to the audience out there, Saints and Sinners ran for 6 seasons. So this lifestyle can get away from you. So that's why I don't pass judgment on any entertainer that's going through anything right now. I try to pray for them. I try to wish the best on them. And I tell people, do the reading that I've done. Try to understand the pitfalls of this business. The worst thing you can do is try to build your career inside of your marriage.
Yeah, in that last interview, you was telling me about that. But just out of curiosity, right? What's the wildest groupie story you could think of?
Oh, man. I remember, it's not one story. It's just, I've met people. I met a girl at the gas station one time. She almost went crazy. Oh my God, you're Chauncey from Menace to Society. Oh my God. I mean, what are you doing later? And it's just, and I'm not mad at groupies. Don't get me wrong. They love who they love. Again, on the Cali Love video, that was my first huge video. And it was just girls and older ladies too, who I've been to the All-Star games. It's beautiful women everywhere that love entertainers and ball players and handsome men or dark men or older men. And I don't have a problem with it. I think it becomes a problem when you're married, when you are not respectful, when you put your hands on people, or when everything is not consensual. But at the end of the day, it's just beautiful. It's people out there that love entertainers, I met a girl, she said she moved from Philadelphia to New Jersey just to be around a big time entertainer. I'm not going to mention his name because every time I mention the name, I get in trouble. But that's how it goes, All I'm going to say to everybody out there, don't judge until you've been there, because it's a hell of a lifestyle. And I was a guy, man, I've never done, real hard drugs. I've never done cocaine. I've never really been a weed smoker. I didn't start drinking until I was 26 years old because I had alcoholism in my family and I wanted to be able to handle myself, when I drank. But it still got the best of me. I didn't know how to handle money. I've given away more than I made almost. They don't talk about that part. I've shared a lot of money. I've helped a lot of people. And, trying to build my relationship, my marriage inside of my career, or my career inside of my marriage. Like one of my partners said, I rolled right out of the game. And 10 years ago, I was homeless. The best thing that ever happened to me. And the reason I'm going to say that is I was in Toronto and I was going through it mentally and spiritually. And I remember this pastor said to me, he says, sometimes God got to put you in a mess to clean you up. And that saved me, along with the 12 steps of forgiveness and the 7 love languages, Love by Leo Buscaglia, who I mentioned. And I just had to go down and do some reading and studying and growing. And I had to pull it in and learn how to handle the attention, the fame, how to handle money, all of that stuff. And when people come to your page and make comments, you can't judge unless you walked in those shoes. I remember one time I was outside of a restaurant, a club, and this well-known entertainer's car came up, truck, and it was an old Bronco. And this girl said, damn, that's all that driving? I said, ma'am, you can't judge that guy's pocketbook. She said, the I can't. I mean, it's really cruel out there sometimes, bro. We don't know. This guy could have been between jobs, or he might have gone through a divorce and lost a lot. I don't know. But I think we got to be a little kinder. That's just my personal feeling. But it's a lot to handle. And we're seeing it playing out. I don't want to say anybody's names, but we're seeing entertainers and ball players fall all over because it's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of people out there trying to set you up. It's a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying that we don't move and sometimes we move with security. In my early days, I didn't move with security. But we've seen basketball players, and I'm not saying everybody's innocent. And that's not an excuse. But I'm saying don't judge until you get in those shoes and we see how you handle it. I can tell you, and stopping right here, I didn't handle it well. And I'm blessed to be alive. If I hadn't we talk about wellness. Had I not met my girl 10 years ago, I wouldn't be sitting right here, because when I met her, I was 70 pounds heavier and I was at stroke level. I probably would be dead right now. And that's not a joke.
You was telling me about how you was homeless at one point. Can you walk me through that? Like, how was that like for you going through
that? All right, you know what I like about you, Art? You do your homework. It's not easy, man. It was very painful. I don't know if it's harder to go from being poor to being rich, or being rich to going back to being poor. I have a lot of great friends. I was blessed that one of my friends let me live in the back of her house. And unfortunately, she was a hoarder and the house was just a mess, but it was better than me living in my truck. And I tried my best to stay close to my kids, but I was hurt. I was mad at myself because I saw some signs that maybe I shouldn't have got married. If I had known statistics, if somebody had said, Cliff, listen, you got a great wife, and she was a great wife, she was a great mom, but when your career takes off, it's going to take you away from all of that, bro. And that's why I try to take my time and do stuff like this. I want to do an evening with Clifton Powell so I can break it down and help some of the young entertainers learn how to handle money, learn about love, learn how to balance it all, because it's a balancing act. And I got to be honest, Art, I don't know how I survived, because I was angry. I was pointing fingers at my wife, my ex-wife, a lady whose name I am going to say, one of my dear friends and like an angel. I'm going to try to get through this without getting emotional. I'm sorry, Art. You asked some really interesting questions, man. I was on my way to the cleaners one day and booked a little small play. And I was coming into the cleaners, and this lady, her name is Anita D'Aguilar, amazing lady. And she said, hey, miss, are you Clifton Powell? And I said, yeah. And I basically broke down crying. She said, I'd love to get an autograph. I love your work. And I said, today, ma'am, I gotta be honest with you, today, I don't feel like signing no fucking autographs. I really don't. She said, brother, are you okay? I said, today I'm not. She said, what's going on? I told her what I was going through. She said, stay right here and I'm gonna go get you a book. And she came back with the book that I just suggested everybody get. If you really wanna grow, if you really wanna understand how to forgive. And the book is not so much about forgiving others, but forgiving yourself for seeing red flags, walking past the red flags, allowing yourself to get into a situation and your instincts tell you, but you kind of caught up. And then when that situation flips, you're blaming the other person. But when you point a finger at someone, it's three fingers pointing back at you. And that book talks about forgiving yourself, because where you were in your maturation, you couldn't have done anything different. And so that book helped me grow. And I sat down for like 4 months from November through like February, March, and just read, stayed in the house and read. I went, I worked a little bit. I made sure my kids were good. And I just read because I said, I got to stop blaming everybody else. And I think that book saved my life also psychologically. And then I just didn't quit. I was living in the back of my friend's house. I remember one time I got stopped by the cops. I didn't have my registration and they were going to tow my car and take me because it's a felony. I started crying. I said, I'm going through a divorce. I had no money. And then you really realize who your friends are, because most of the people I thought liked me or would have my back if I was homeless or fell, they kind of disappeared, but I had a lot of family support. And I have a few friends who really were there for me. But I got to say to you, Walt, Art, looking back, I wouldn't change anything because it helped me grow. And like I said, a pastor said to me, sometimes God got to put you in a mess to clean you up. And it's not an easy lifestyle to handle. And I had to go down. I had to go down to come back up. And I'm in a different space mentally. I don't blame anybody for anything I've been through. I don't point fingers. I point fingers at myself, and I try to go in and correct my behavior. And that's what it is. So what I do in terms of not so much giving back, but to try to share my journey so I can help other young entertainers is to give them my life story and say, do it like this, do it, don't do that, do this, don't do that. You don't get that in my era when I was coming up. And at least for me, I didn't get it. Not that it would have helped. It would have helped. It may not have changed a lot if I didn't listen, but sometimes you need guidance. And for veterans who've been through it, but everybody's trying to get that next lick and it's hard, you know? So, and I wanted to mention something that you said earlier. When you hurt someone, where you leave them is where they stay. Sometimes when you hurt people, whether it's your friends or family or your wife or your husband, you gotta apologize if you know you were wrong, and your apology has to come with changed behavior. And you may not ever get that 100% person that was wide open. You may get a different version. And if you can't live with that, then you have to move on. But you have to own that your behavior got them there, especially if they were on point. So that's what that meant. One of my buddies, a writer, his name is Mr. Walter Bennett, excellent writer. He said, Cliff, sometimes when you hurt people, where you leave them is where they stay. And one thing I've learned through this process, Art, and I'll stop on this because it's all really heavy stuff. I'm going to do an evening with Clifton Powell. I want to try to take it to the HBCUs. I want to take it around the country, especially for young artists, to get a veteran to kind of walk them through how you do better. And because we start good, you want to start good and finish good. And sometimes we start good and finish bad in the entertainment business. I call basketball, football entertainment, you know? So that's what it is.
How you feel about the people that was critiquing your past roles when they was, giving you pushback for the comments you made that went viral?
Yeah, I think, and I said it in the podcast that we did, a while ago. People, stop. We got to do better. Pull up my resume. I played doctors, I played lawyers, I played police officers, I played pastors. I spoke on Women That Are Loose before, and I'm gonna speak on it again. Reuben Cannon, who put me in Buffalo Soldiers, put me in Why Do Fools Fall in Love, put me in Selma, Lord Selma as Martin Luther King, which was a highlight of my career. Reuben Cannon, a lot of times in Hollywood, when a casting director of his stature likes your work, they try to find things for you because they like your work. Woman Thou Art Loose was a piece that came across his desk. I think he's one of the producers. They had a name actor in it that dropped out the day of. Reuben Cannon called me. He said, Cliff, I need you, man. He called me on a Wednesday. He said, I need you on set Thursday. One of my main guy dropped out. I didn't even get a chance to read the script. Probably had I read the script, I probably would have turned that role down. But because it was Reuben, I went in. He said it's called Women That Are Loose. I didn't know what the script was about. When I got to set, I got there an hour earlier. I read the script. I said, you know what? I'll do this. It's not something I would like to do, but I'm going to do it. But I tell you this, the scene where I have to touch that little girl, I'm not doing that. We can hear sounds and slam the door. I have taken more flack for that role. And I love Black folks. And I said it before. I'm not going to talk about NIGGAs. But some people just want to be negative. Do your research on my career. I'm a character actor. Just like I got some smoke about playing a gay man. And then they put up the picture of me on a motorcycle doing a spoof. If it was a spoof, I'm a character actor. I can morph into Dr. King right now. I can morph into almost any character you want to see. But it's acting. And you're never going to see me, kissing a man on screen. I don't do that. That's just for me. And you can judge me. You can talk about me. I don't have a problem with whatever people do with their intimate lives. But I have a right as a person to decide what is comfortable for me. Spoofs are about as far as I'll go. And I've done several spoofs. The Breaks was a spoof. I did a play where we spoofed. That's where I draw the line. I'm trying not to play. The guy wanted me to play a coon on the show. I have to draw the line. My firm base, the base of my support comes from the African American community. I'm not going to just literally just go out and play some step and fetch it kind of guy. I don't knock anybody who does. I'm just not going to do it. And if you don't understand that, then I don't know what to tell you. Do your research. That again, Women Thou Art Loosed was a movie that I did because Reuben Cannon was so wonderful to me in the early part of my career. It's easy, Art, to be, smug when you make a lot of money. And I'm back. I make good money now and I'm blessed, but I went through some tough years. It's real easy to be smug when you're good and your money's flowing. But the real true test is, how are you when you were down in your luck and people helped you? Do you remember them? I remember everybody, and Reuben Cannon was one of those casting directors who found something for me anytime he was working. So I went in and I'm glad I did it, because after the shows, we had panel discussions and discovered and put a safety net out there for a lot of those women. The other thing I'm going to say is we got to stop thinking. And somebody said, well, you play the tough guy so well that it's a compliment. It's not a compliment. Robert De Niro, Pacino, and Joe Pesci, they kill people and damn near 3 people a scene. And I think my people just hang on to it too much. I'm a character actor. I've never been arrested. I take care of my kids. I don't hit women. I don't get in trouble. I'm not on drugs. I'm a character actor and I'm trained, and I can morph in and out of characters because of my training. And that's it. But black people, like we said about the guy that came to my page and called my mother and we're not going to go into what else he said. I mean, that's disrespectful, man, over a role that you don't even know the background. So stop making dumb comments and do your research, people. I just did a pastor on BMF a couple of weeks ago. I got some new stuff coming up where I'm playing a heroin guy that's dealing heroin. And then I'm playing a politician over here. And then I got another job coming up where I'm another pastor. We are character actors. Watch your comments, man, because sometimes people just say blatant, let me say it the way I want to say, they say blatant shit that doesn't even match what the hell they saw. And we got to do better. That's all I can say. And it's offensive to me. And I have a hard time handling it sometimes, especially when somebody comes to your page and, like I said before, they found my mother in the bottom of the Anacostia River. And for you to come to my page because you saw a role that you didn't like me play and call my mama a dick-eating hoe, you are way out of line. And I don't think anybody should accept that. And that's just how I feel. And so we got to do better. I got a movie I'm doing, and I'm not going to say the title, but I'm playing it's based on a true story. But this cat is tough, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack, but I'm going to do it because it's an interesting story. And a gentleman whose life it is, he turned his life around. I think black folks are just hard on each other. I don't want to say black folks or NIGGAs. I think as a race of people, we just hard on each other, man. And I can handle it. You come to my page talking shit about my mama, and I'm going to handle it. And if you want to come for me, I'm going to be ready, because I think that's way out of line. And anybody else that comes to my page, most of the time, even after this round table, I don't read the discussions. Some girl, the comments, some girl said, I hate everything he does. What he did on the round table was unbearable. And then one gentleman came and broke it all down and said, first of all, the guy didn't give Mr. Powell a chance to finish. Mr. Powell was making some real positive statements. One psychiatrist came to my page. She said, I love how you tried to break everything down. And then they had another clip where the guy said, didn't you say that? I said, that's not exactly what I said. You know, some people are coming in, you know, making all kinds of random comments, though they put the argument up before they put the context. So, and also the last time we did Art of Dialogue, people came in and took everything out of perspective. Other smaller platforms come and put their own heading. Cliff Powell bashes Spike Lee again. I said on the podcast the last time I was here, I was playing around when I made a comment about Spike Lee. If you want to know about Spike Lee and his business practices, go back and do your research about the actors from She's Gotta Have It. That's all I'm going to say. Now, having said that, now that I'm a little older, some of the guys that have walked with me in these last 30 years, 40 years, have helped me see it from other perspectives. I should have not made that comment, even in joking, and I should have seeked out Spike Lee and talked to him privately. And I said that in the last podcast, but still a smaller platform came and took it and sensationalized it as clickbait. So I can't stop that, but I'm here to clear the record up. I apologize, and I'll apologize again to Mr. Spike Lee, because I should have sought him out and not even made a joke about it. But if you want to understand everything, do your research. It's a lot, Art.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You got your first car at 45, right? And you got your first bank account at 46?
All right, where you getting all this stuff from, bro? You got a genie at your house or some shit? Hey, man, you know, man, people never really heard my story. Art, you know, like I said, my dad was dysfunctional and my sister helped raise me. I grew up in a rough town part of DC, and I had to leave the hood on the weekends. I never saw my dad go to the bank. My dad put all his money under the mattress. I never wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a football player. And when I got into this back in the 70s, late 70s, I joined SAG, I think in 79. And then I did 10 years in New York, where you're just a theater actor and you're not getting a lot of national recognition. And then I think all of us kind of migrated. Denzel and Sam and Angela Bassett, Ving Rhames, Charlie Dutton kind of migrated out to LA. And then next thing you know, you're blowing up, so to speak. And I was ill prepared to handle any of it. And I think I was 37 or 38 when I got there. And I really didn't start making money until like late 40s, 50s. So my first car, which I've never spoken about, and I'm not going to go into this long ass story, Art, because I know they're going to pick it apart. But my first car was a scooter. I had a scooter. I couldn't afford a car. I did an episode of In the Heat of the Night, and I couldn't afford, I only made $2,500. And by the time I paid my man a little bit of the rent and the electricity bill and bought some food, I might have had about $900 left. And one of my buddies wanted to sell me this big ass Dodge Fury, which is bigger than this room that I'm sitting in. And I said, I'm going to go get me a damn scooter. And I got a scooter, and it cost me, I think, $700. That was my first ride. And I used to get ridiculed on that thing like to no end, you know, like my nickname was BET, Black ET, riding down La Brea on a scooter. And I had a little basket on the back. And then I had a scooter accident and almost died. So I got a Ford Festiva, which is about this big. It's about as small as a little Mini Cooper. And people made fun of me inside of that. I had no money. I really didn't have any money. And if you ever lived in LA and had to catch the bus, it's brutal. One time I caught the bus from over in Ladera Heights all the way to Disney. And by the time I got there, I was sweating like a slave. And they looked at me like, I know you ain't here to audition. Are you here to pick cotton or audition? I was sweating like a dog. And I thought it would be cool because, you know, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New York. I get my book, I read at the bus stop and had me a little fruit in my bag and food. Man, I sat at that bus stop so long, it was like 90 degrees. So I said, you know what, I got to get something to ride around in. So I got the scooter, and then I got a Ford Festiva, and then I got a little Mustang. And the way I got my Mustang, my credit was so bad that I knew the guy that owned the dealership, and they told me I had to pay for the whole car up front. And he said, man, no, we're not gonna do that to the guy. So I went through it, Art. I went through it. And I don't know how I did it. I just didn't quit. And I got ridiculed, man. I remember one time I was outside a club and I had a rabbit. After my Ford Festiva, I had a rabbit. And this nigga said, hey, this that nigga from Menace to Society driving a motherfucking rabbit. Oh, broke ass nigga. I mean, and I remember being dissed by girls, bro. I remember one girl, I met her in the club, Art, and I used to leave the club, it closed at 1:30. I would always leave the club about 1:15. And I had parked my little scooter across the street from the Beverly Center. And you know, it'd be cold at night, so I had my little jacket and my basket, and I hid it all in the bushes, and I go party a little bit. I ain't really have no money. I had like a half a drink, but I see guys and they're like Daryl Strawberry or some of the entertainer guys, you know, and I was like, man, that's cool. Some of the ball players. And I remember I met this girl and she said, so what you driving? I said, I'm driving a Lexus. You know, I'm lying, Art. And I look at the clock, it's like 1:45. And I had like 2 wine coolers. And I said, I better get out of here. By 2:00, the whole club lets out. And I'm on my little scooter going down La Cienega. And she pulls up at the light. And she looked over at me. She said, "Oh no, you ain't. You're not trying to take a woman out on that." She didn't say woman. She said B. But she said, "I know you ain't trying to take me out on that piece of shit." And I was just like, and I shot down La Cienega. And I was trying to understand it all. And then the last thing I'll say is after my scooter, like I said, I had a Ford Festiva. And so one day I was at, I was at Fox Hills Mall or one of the malls. And I came out and these girls had seen me on Rock. They were like, "Hey, ain't you the guy from Rock?" I was like, "Hey, how y'all doing?" And I looked over down a little ways and I saw my little teeny Ford Festiva, and I knew I couldn't go get in that car because they would have clowned me. So I kind of just went in a record shop and I was just standing there. The guy said, "Can I help you?" I was like, "No, I'm just too embarrassed to go to my car." And so after I got it home, I called one of my dear friends who'd been in Hollywood for a while. And I asked her, I said, "Is it me or was I embarrassed to walk to my car?" And she said, "Welcome to Hollywood." And so, when I look back on those days, Art, I just feel blessed that I didn't quit, because you get a lot of flack when you broke and poor and black and dark. I remember meeting the girl. She said, my grandfather told me dark people were bad. I've been through it. I've been left at clubs because I ain't had no money, and then those same people circle back when you're rich. It's been a lot, man. And we don't have enough time to go through all of that. But I never stopped. I never let it stop me. But it's been a lot, and it doesn't stop. I mean, I talked about it the last time when I was on here, how people make fun of you, We got to be better. But I get it. When you're in the limelight, you open, man. You like wide open. No, I'm just saying, so yeah, I didn't get my first car. I really didn't start making money, Art, until I was almost in like early 50s. Yeah. Just can't quit. If you don't quit, there's a guy, one of my guys, forget his name, he's on Abbott Elementary. Just got his first big role at 73. I went in for an audition. And I'm saying this to the young artists out there who may be struggling. You may be just starting out. I tell my girl as an actress, you can't put a time frame on this, man. You just got to do your work. You got to stay faithful. You got to try to be good to people. You got to, stay vigilant. And my father used to say, all you need is faith the size of a mustard seed. So when I do an evening with Clifton Powell or Behind the Lens, I talk about my journey. I remember going into an audition it might have been 1983, 84. And I never forget the casting director's name. I can't remember her name, but Bonnie Timmerman. So I go in for this movie called Street Smarts. And this must have been 1982, 83. And so I sign in a call sheet. I go in and they call my name and I go next. But there's a guy sitting in the lobby who was big in New York theater, but he wasn't known internationally or around the country. So I go in and I said, Miss Timmerman. She said, hey, Clifton, you know, I was new to New York, but in the back of my day, you didn't have one agent, you kind of freelance with people. So I went in and I was supposed to read this role, you know, as a chicken man in Street Smarts. And I said, listen, there's a gentleman out there who I think should go before me. She said, well, what is his name, Clifton? I said, well, his name is Morgan Freeman. She said, who is that? This was 1983, 84. And ironically, Morgan Freeman got that role and he hasn't stopped working, but he might've been in his late 50s or 60s, you know? So I just think what I would say to young people out there, get your training, stay vigilant, stay faithful, try to be nice to people, put your ego in your work. You know, for the people that make comments about me, you never met me. I'm not saying if you meet me, you're gonna like me, but don't judge me on a role I play. Get to know me as a person. I try to sign every autograph. I try to take every picture. You know, I go into the prisons. I go into the group homes. I talk to the young men and women, all nationalities, try to help them find their way, because I came out of a lot of dysfunction and I had some wonderful people around me who helped me get here. And like I said, I'm so grateful to African-American people who made me a household name, but to my Latino audience, my Asian audience. I was in the store the other day, this white lady said, hey, are you Panky? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, wait till I tell my husband. It's just a blessing, man, to be honored for the work that you do. And, you know, for the critics, do your research and stop putting everybody in a box. That's all I can say.
Out of curiosity, how old was you when you was riding on the scooter? And what's the backstory behind your incident?
Oh, man, Art. Where you get your crystal ball from, Art? Hey, if you all are trying to put together a podcast, y'all better come holler at Art, because he does this research. I must have been 37, 38. And it was 93. So count from 1956 to 93. You know, late 30s, 40s almost. And what happened was I couldn't afford a car. So I bought the scooter. And you know, LA is so pretty in LA, so I would never wear my helmet. So I'm riding around and you know, you're supposed to wear your helmet. So one day a voice said to me, I know what happened. I was on Rock. When I was playing Andre Thompson on Rock, they called me back in to play a different character. So I was rushing to the audition. Now, at the time, I pretty much was homeless. Where was I living at the time? I was living on in one of my buddy's guest rooms. I didn't have a lot of money and I barely had health insurance, but I had just done In the Heat of the Night and I couldn't buy a car. So I bought the scooter with the last 700 I had. And so I'm riding down, on the west side. I can't remember which street. And a voice said to me, and I always feel like it was my mom's spirit, because my mom, like I told you in the last podcast, the night my mom walked into the night and they found her in the Anacostia River, but for the grace of God, my cousin lived right across the hall. My cousin don't live across the hall. My mom might have taken me with her, not being in her right mind. Now, a lot of people who are religious may not believe in, you know, how your ancestors are watching over you, but I can feel that the night my mother, I'm sorry, Art. I'm sorry, bro. The night my mother walked into the night, I know somewhere in her mind, even though her mind wasn't stable, I know somewhere she said, somebody take care of my baby. I was only 4 years old. I can remember my mom's face, but I can't remember her voice. And ironically, my father ended up in the same mental hospital later as when we get into how I got started as an actor, in the same hospital as my mom. Somehow, I feel like her spirit, even with my girl, who when I met her, I walked into a room, Art. In fact, she came with a guy who was doing the photography for me or doing the taping for me, doing an audition. And I told him, I said, don't bring anybody. And he brought her. And then he did it again. I said, I don't need that Rita lady you brought. He brought her again. And her and I our energies connected. And that was 10 years ago tomorrow. But I always felt like my mom sent her because for all the things I needed, she has. So that spirit, that voice has always been in my head. So when I was riding down, I can't remember which street, a voice said, put your helmet on. And I stopped. I took my I took my hat and put it on, and I put my helmet on top of my hat, but I didn't lock it. You hear me? So now I'm riding another 10, 15 minutes, and a voice said to me, put your helmet on. And I heard it again. And I stopped. And 15 minutes later, a car cut me off coming down Wilshire Boulevard. And I hit a bike pole going 55 miles an hour. If I didn't have my hat on, my helmet on and locked, it wouldn't be a Pinky or a Cuddy or Martin Luther King or a character that I play, any one of them, Chauncey. I would have been dead. I would have split my head open. I ruptured my colon. I punctured my leg, I almost lost my leg. I dislocated my shoulder, and I had to go into emergency surgery for my colon. My whole body, lower part of my body was swelled up, and I was down for like almost a year. But I barely had enough money for healthcare, and I remember coming out and living with one of my friends and just getting back on my feet. But the miracle in there is I could have been dead. So I made it through. So that's what happened.
From your point of view, how fake is Hollywood? Because I know earlier you was telling me about how one of your friends betrayed you.
I don't think that's just specific to Hollywood, you know? When you don't have it, unless people are really solid, you know, everybody likes a winner. Everybody wants to be around people that are successful. Everybody wants, you know, be in the limelight. But there's some people who just like you for you. And I think, you know, you got to be, you know, I don't want to point just at Hollywood, you know. It could be your relatives. It could be your kids. You know, it could be your best friend. One of my buddies who I thought was one of my dear friends, man. I'm talking about dear friends. When I was homeless, he called me. And when you homeless and you broke, you be like a crackhead just looking for money. And he called me, he said, yo, Cliff, some people just contacted me about you doing a play. I said, really? He said, yeah, what you charge a week? Now, this is one of my partners who I thought loved me and I loved him. And we all played ball together. Our kids went to school together. And I'd known him since my time in LA. He said, what's your rate for the week? I said, 15,000. He was on the phone. He said, you ain't worth no motherfucking 15,000. And I tell you right here, Art, I don't know how I felt. I was so hurt. I was so crushed because I thought this was my friend. And that's just one incident, you know. I remember I had my bike accident. After my bike accident, the girl I had met before I got my bike accident, she just disappeared. I thought we were dating. I saw her at a club. I said, you know, she came over, she said, hey, what's up? I said, what happened to you? You just disappeared. She said, looked like you wasn't gonna never come up. I said, how you like me now, boo-boo? But, you know, it's just how some people are. Not everybody is like that. So I don't want to get misquoted saying, I'm telling you what my experiences were, you know, but it's hard. And it's not just Hollywood. It's, you know, you just run into people who are just not solid. That's what it is.
Fake people, man. Fake people. But I do want to ask you, what is a role that you auditioned for that you wish you would have got?
Yeah. You know what I wish I would have got? I auditioned for American Gangster with Denzel playing Nicky Barnes and Cuba Gooding guy. I wish I'd have got that. I really wanted to play Nicky Barnes. I thought he was an interesting character, and it would have been so interestingly wonderful to be in a film with the King Denzel. You know, because my New York days, Denzel was like the king. You know, I had the opportunity to work with my friend and a gentleman who I really admire, who's a hell of an actor. I still don't think he's got all his accolades. Mr. Sam Jackson. And we were all actors. They were few years ahead of me when I got to New York in '79. And we worked on Sacrifice together. I played Mushmouth, of course. Sam played the big gangster. And he gave me a hug in one of the scenes before we started shooting. And he said, 40 years later, huh? And I don't think Sam knows I had tears in my eyes, man. Art, man, there's always gonna be people, friends, families, or fake friends, or have what kind of friends, I don't know, that just don't have your back, or you think may have your back. It's just a part of life. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't bother me. But I just try to keep going. I try to, put it in perspective and keep going, Sometimes people are jealous of you, I can't speak on groupies. I can't speak on some of the women who diss me. I remember one time I was out at dinner and this girl said, I don't know why you talking about being no damn actor. You ain't never gonna make it. This was my New York days. Soon as we got to the door, she started walking straight. I walked straight with her, and then I cut and went down the next block. I haven't seen her since. I got a lot of stories, but I just didn't quit. So I don't, when I coach and when I teach and when I lecture, I tell my students, don't believe anything anybody tell you. There's no such thing as can't. Just keep going. Because if you hear my story, I told everybody, I don't know if I said on the last podcast, I got 380 on my SATs. They give you 200 for your name. 580, they give you 200 for your name. I got 380. 380 is certified retarded. I'm just telling you. I was in 8C, 11C, 12C. I took the SAT. I never took SAT prep. I walked around the room while the proctor was sitting at his desk. And when I do my lectures, I tell you how we did it. I was like, hey, yo, duck. Hey, what's up, nigga? Hey, what you got for A? I'm put D, nigga. Hey, Poop, what you got for 86, man? That's how I took the SATs. I know it sounds crazy to people out there, but I was in with all my boys from H, C, D, E, F, and G. Back in the day, they had a tracking system. That's how I took the SATs. When they told me I had a full scholarship to college, I almost passed out. I don't know how I got to college. I think my mom had something to do with it, because I only got 580 on my SATs, Art. They give you 200 for your name. That means I got 380 on my SATs. You can't even go to no college or even junior college with a 380. But it's all a blessing, so that's how I look at it.
How did you first get started in acting? You was telling me about how your mom and dad, they was in the same mental hospital?
Yeah. Well, and we'll stop here after this one, Art, because it's gonna make me cry. I know you probably have some more. We'll go over some more. I really, when I think about it, I think people say your steps are already ordered. I believe that I have a blessing on me, and I believe it's my mama's spirit that has guided me. I was a cut up in school. I was like the class clown. I remember one time I was in the 3rd grade. I was a patrol boy, and my father went to the only PTA meeting this ever went to, and the teachers told him I laid out in the middle of the street because I was really fast, Art. I was a football player, and a car could have ran over me, but I was so fast I jumped up before the car could get me. And my father came home and said, who you supposed to be? Red Fox? You laying out, you Mr. Funny Man? And he beat my butt. I had great teachers who really loved and cared about me. So I know everybody out there knows my nephew is James Brown, the sportscaster. James Brown's mother raised me along with JB and my nephews and my cousins and my nieces. And on the weekends, I had to go out to Silver Spring area with JB and my sister who raised me. Her name was Mary Ann Brown, God rest her soul. So as I got to Woodson Junior High, still getting in trouble, JB was a big time basketball star in DC, like Dave Bing and Adrian Danley and all those guys, Art. So I decided that I probably need to get out of my neighborhood school and not go to high school with my boys because I'm gonna get in trouble. And I stayed in detention all the time because I was like the class clown, the kid in the back throwing the spit bubbles at people and shooting the spit bubble through the straw. And I couldn't go to any assemblies. My teacher in the 8th grade would be like, Clifton Powell, come here. Don't you run in that, come here. You know you can't go in no assembly, you're gonna be acting up. So Miss Turner, I don't know where she is, but I wanna say publicly right now, if I'm 70, hopefully she's still alive, but I wanna say Woodson Junior High had some great teachers, Mr. Gignon, Mr. Gray, but Miss Turner saved my life. So in the 8th grade, Art, I went to her because I want to play football. And I never thought about being an actor. So I went to her, I said, Miss Turner, I want to go to DeMatha. Now, everybody knows DeMatha was a prestigious Catholic high school back in the day, right? So I said, Miss Turner, I want to go to DeMatha. I need a letter of recommendation. She looked at me, I'm going to look at you, Art. She looked at me just like this. Clifton Powell, what could I possibly say good about you with your crazy ass? That was my 8th grade teacher. And I'm dancing around like, can't you make up something this Thursday? She said, if you don't stop moving, stop moving. I was like, come on, Miss Dirty. And I didn't know I was goofy. Like I was just a class clown kind of guy. And she said, if you don't stop moving, boy, I swear. And she just stared at me, Art. I said, Miss Turner, can't you lie on the application? Say I'm a good student. She said, you know what, Clifton? And you got to understand, Art, I was at 13, 14, I weighed about 110 pounds. I was dark as the night. My hair was beady as hell. And one guy called me 11:59, 1 minute before midnight. Captain Black, Black Spook, and I had gats in all of my front teeth. And Miss Turner looked at me. And back then, being dark was not fashionable. And she said, Clifton Powell, I don't know what you're going to be. She said, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lie on this application and maybe you will get into DeMatha. Now, you got to understand, DeMatha was a very prestigious Catholic school and they didn't know JB was my nephew, you know? So I got in. In my first year, I'm in the 9th grade now, I played football. But I was so little, and because I played in a neighborhood, Art, and my IQ was low, I didn't know how to read plays. But I was fast as hell, and I could catch anything, and I could jump out the gym or off the field. I was good. But I only played 1 year, but I stayed in detention when I wasn't at football practice. I couldn't play basketball, got cut from the basketball team, gave somebody the finger on the back of the bus, so they cut me off the basketball team. I'm in detention every day with my white buddies. And I said to myself, I got to get out of here. So some of my guys from the neighborhood went to a Catholic high school called St. Anthony's, whose basketball coach was Big John Thompson. So that summer before I went to St. Anthony's, I saw a play. And I'd never seen a play before, Art. I was like, what was that? So I that summer before I went to DeMatha to go to St. Anthony's, that summer, St. Anthony's had a play. And I went with my buddies and I was like, what is that? They said, like, that's a play. I say, I might do that shit. That look cool. I was just playing around, Art. So I ended up at St. Anthony's that September, which was going into 1972, 73. And just on a whim, I went to the teacher who was directing the play. His name was Mr. Redden, a white guy. I said, yo, my man. He says, hey, Clef, how are you, man? He talked just like this. I said, listen here, Mr. Redden. I want to do the play, but I don't want to do no goddamn singing or nothing. He says, well. Now he's a cool white guy in this integrated integrated Catholic high school in the middle of a nice part of town in DC called St. Anthony's. Like I said, Big John Thompson was the basketball coach, so I couldn't make that team. I played a little bit of baseball, and there was no football team. So I said, Mr. Red, put me in the place. You know, well, we'll see if we put you in the play, Cliff. So, lo and behold, he put me in the play. Now, I have no idea, Art, what the hell I'm doing. But I study, I guess I learned the lines. I don't even know how I learned the lines. And I'm doing the play. Now, I called my cousin, Frances, God rest her soul. I said, I know y'all coming to the play on Saturday. Now, my gym, Art, is probably from this wall to that wall, which is not a big gym. It was like a multi-purpose room. And it doubled as the cafeteria. I said, whatever y'all do, if y'all come to the play, don't bring my dad. And if you do, don't let him drink. So now I'm like in the 10th grade, right? So the name of the play was Little Abner. So we're running around as a musical. And so I have my druthers, a druther have my druthers. And then somewhere in the song, me and a couple of other actors get zapped. So I'm on the stage, Art, I'm frozen like this. And my buddy standing next to me, his name is James Wheeler. All I heard was my father say, that's my boy. My father somehow found the alcohol, and in the middle of the play while I'm frozen and the lights are on me in the auditorium, my father came up on the stage and tried to shake my hand. Now, I was so embarrassed, I almost missed a whole month of school because every time I came into my classroom, my buddies would be like, that's my boy. Did y'all see Mr. Powell drunk at the play? And so after that, Art, I was embarrassed. And I was like, I'm not interested in acting anyway, so I am never doing it again. So what happened was, one of my guys that played the lead in the play heard about this program called Workshop for Careers in the Arts. And he said, why don't you ride up there with me, Cliff? And I said, man, I ride up there because, you know, it's a rough part of town. So I rode up there with him, and I'm sitting in the lobby, and I wasn't planning on coming out. And one of the guys, never forget him, became my angel. His name was Kenneth Doherty. God rest your soul to all my teachers. He came out and he said, excuse me, we need more men in here. I'm like, yo, head, Brian, with that little bullshit. I ain't trying to act. And I was a hood kid. So I was rough around the edges, Art. This before I got to college and I was, learn how to talk, and cause I had a Southern accent and I was hood. I was like, yo, my man, go ahead with that little bullshit, bro. I ain't trying to act. So he came out again about 10 minutes later. He said, excuse me, what is your name? I said, Clifton Powell. He said, will you please come in? We need more strong men in here. I said, man, go ahead with that bullshit, bro. I ain't trying to act. I already told you that. I don't know why he came out again, Art, but he came out one more time. He said, I'm going to ask you one more time, will you please come in and audition? I was like, my man, why you keep asking, bro? I ain't trying to be no actor, bro. I just came up here to be with my friends so nobody wouldn't beat him up. He said, well, we need more strong men in here. He said, come in and audition. I said, what is an audition, man? He said, just come in and do a skit. I was like, all right, then if that's what you want me to do, I'll do the shit. So I went in, Art. Now they got like 20 people in the room auditioning. So one side, they give us a thing, what's called improv to do. So one side, they gave it a topic, say abortion. So these 10 people had to argue against abortion. I was in a group over here for abortion, but we got to argue and not use no words. Now, I don't know anything about improv. I don't know anything about acting. And so I just became a black Chinese. I was like, and they was talking, they arguing back and forth. I was like, and then I think I jumped up and said, and we arguing to and fro a point, but we couldn't use words. I never did an improv before. And everybody in the room was like dying laughing. And I was like, I don't know why they laughing. I was just acting stupid. So I leave. A week and a half later, they called me and said, you're in the program. I said, what program is this? They said the Workshop for Careers in the Arts, which if everybody is listening right now, became Duke Ellington High School. So I'm in the program. My dad was in and out of, his troubles with alcoholism. And so I'm between my house, my dad's house and my sister Marianne and JB's house. So my first 6 months in the program, Art, I'm rough around the edges. And I would not wear my leotards and tights for dance class. I had to take dance, I had to take music, I had to take speech classes, I had to take acting classes. And I just never saw ballet as a kid. And the only person I ever saw in leotards and tights was Peter Pan on TV. And I was like, I'm not wearing that shit. So Debbie Allen, all y'all out there, was my dance teacher in high school. So every time I go to Debbie's class, I have on dress pants, hard dress shoes, and a wife beater. And Debbie would hit me with the pointer. I done told you, Mr. Man, she called me Mr. Man, you need to wear your leotards and tights if you're gonna be in here. That was every day for like 3 months. And then I think because I was so rough around the edges, Art, I was scaring some of the other teachers and some of the kids because I was just a hood nigga. I was just rough. I wasn't trying to be rough. I wasn't a thug, but I was rough around the edges, you know? And I never seen no ballet. I never been to ballet. I only saw one play. So I'm gonna try to speed through this, Art, because I know it's been a while, but I want people to understand what faith is and why I get so upset when people try to put me in a box. I was the worst actor in the history of actors that ever came through that program. So every Friday, you have what they call, you got to bring in a scene. And every scene has to have a beginning, middle, and end. I didn't know what I was doing, Art. So every scene I brought in was me on the toilet. This is me on the toilet. And you can't use real props, so you got to pantomime. So this is me reading the paper. And I act like I'm reading the paper. My teacher said, stop. What are you doing? And I just break down crying, Art. She said, just get out of here. That was every Friday. And I sit outside the class and just cry. One, I want to play football. Two, I just wasn't grasping the concept of being an actor, and I was dreadful. So about 3 months later, I gotta get my tissues because this always makes me cry. I came in and I had a teacher, his name was Charles Brown. We call him Charlie Brown. Now, if any of you all out there have seen Traded Places, when Eddie comes across the park and he's on that little thing like he has no legs, the black cop who pulled him up off this thing and made him stand up was Charles Brown. Amazing actor who was my teacher at Workshop for Careers in the Arts, which became Duke Ellington. He called me in the room. My nickname is Sweet Pea. So all the people out there that really know me personally, they know my nickname is Sweet Pea, right? So he said, P, I need to talk to you. And I was like, what's up, Charlie? I respected Charlie. And it's not that I didn't respect any of my teachers. It's just that I was a fish out of water, man. I was like this hood kid in a program that I wasn't ready to be a part of. I didn't want to be a part of. And I didn't want to be an actor, even though I was goofy as hell and crazy and nuts because I grew up with all boys. I was a fish out of water. And I think my hood edge kind of rubbed people the wrong way. I wasn't rude and nasty to people. I was just edgy. So Charlie said, listen, Sweet Pea, they want to put you out the program. I said, Charlie, honestly, I don't really give a f, bro. I really don't. I don't even want to be here. And he stared at me just like you looking at me, Art. He said, no, that's not what's going to happen. He said, I think you got potential. And I said, really? Just like how you've done your research. I'm like, where's your crystal ball? Again, I think it had to be my mom's spirit. I said, you think I got potential, Charlie? I'm the worst actor in this place, man. I'm horrible. I'm finally wearing I was going to wear my leotards and tights. I ain't wearing them. He said, they're going to put you out. He said, but I'm talking to them about keeping you in because I think you got potential. He said, so this is what's going to happen. You're not going to switch classes. You're going to take acting with me and you're going to be with me all day. And we're going to figure it out. He said, but Sweet Pea, you gotta wear your leotards and tights. And I say two things, Art. I think I had the spirit of my mom, but I think also being a Pisces, I'm flexible. And me and Charlie, I don't know if anybody out there ever had a stare down with anybody, but me and Charlie, I sat in Charlie's office and stared at him for like 15 minutes, just like this. And he was a tough guy. After 15 minutes, he said, "What's it gonna be, Sweet Pea?" And I said, "You know what, Charlie? If you think I should do this, I'll do it, man." So then the next day I had my leotards and tights on. I'm looking like a black ballerina or ballet dancer. I was uncomfortable, but I wore it. A teacher came in, God rest her soul. Her name is Glenda Dickerson. But I want to give homage to Glenda Dickerson, Mike Malone, Skipper Driscoll, my speech teacher, Mike Malone, dance teacher who trained Debbie and Kiki Shepard and all of those folks. Glenda Dickerson, who took me under her wing. Charles Brown, God rest your soul. Charles Augins, Clyde Barrett were all my teachers, dance and speech. And so when Glenda Dickerson came in, she took me under her wing. And I remember one time we were sitting around talking about the Harlem Renaissance, like in one of the cubicles, right? And kind of wide open. And she said, "Isn't this this man right here beautiful and black like Clifton?" And I just was looking around like, I know she's not talking about me, because all I did was get ridiculed for being so dark. And she just took me under her wings. And that next year they were doing a play called The Lion and the Jewel. And she said, "You're gonna play the lead, Clifton Powell." And it was the biggest play that ever happened in high school in DC at the DC Black Repertory Company. One day after class, Art, because we would rehearse late, you know? And I got a ride home. I lived in right across the street from Parkside in Mayfair. All my Mayfair folks, my Parkside DMV people, I love y'all. Especially my DC folks get banned when I say DMV, but I recognize the whole area, but I love my DC folks. I was coming down the street, Art, and my dad had lost his way. Man, I try to get through this story, Art, without crying, man, but I want people to know. That's why I'm here. You know, he called me back to come back and do a recap. And I want to keep coming back, man. I want to do something bigger where we bring people in or we go out to the schools and do this, but we'll figure that part out. But I was coming down the street and I remember inside of my apartment, my mother had a picture frame, a mirror in it, but it was gold and it was kind of diagonal, this way, that way, that way. And I saw it in the rubble, because back in the day, if you got evicted, they put your clothes and your furniture all out on the streets. And I didn't know how bad my dad was, because I was mostly at workshops and with my sister. And my man gave me, one of my partners from workshop gave me a ride. His name was Wayne. I forget his last name. I said, "Wayne, that looks like my stuff." And when I got up on it, Art, it was all my furniture was piled in the doorway. My father tried to move it back into the apartment. All my clothes, all my college applications, everything was stolen or just in a shambles. And I rushed inside and I had to jump over some of the furniture that my dad tried to pull back into the apartment. And we had lived in that complex for like at least 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And I slid down and I called my sister, Marianne. And I said, "I don't know where my dad is, but we got evicted." She said, "You get in a cab or you have Wayne, your friend." He said, "Who are you with?" And my sister's really tough and strong. She said, "Who are you with?" And you have to understand, my sister was 21 when her mother committed suicide, you know? And my sister was very tough, but she was very gentle with me. She's tough, But she'll tell you, my brother never gave me any trouble because I was a good-natured kid. I listened to my adults and elders and stuff like that. She said, you get in the cab. So I had to go to her house. And I started living with them permanently. So the next day, I called the workshop program. And I got Mr. Wiley, Dennis Wiley. I don't know if you're out there, Mr. Wiley, but I appreciate you. It's like Miss Turner. I looked for you, Miss Turner. I couldn't find my 8th grade teacher who helped me get into the math. And I said, Mr. Wiley, this is Sweet Pea. He said, hey, Sweet Pea. I said, now at this time, I'm doing pretty good in the program art. Like I said, I started in a play and, you know, things were moving along. I was starting to learn how to act a little bit and learn the acting lingo. I said, I got to drop out the program. My dad had a nervous breakdown. I don't know where he is. And all my clothes and all my college applications, everything gone. And I don't think I can't pay my tuition. He said, man, I'm so sorry to hear that, Sweet Pea. He said, listen, man, today is Monday. He said, give me a call back tomorrow morning and I'm gonna go to the board. So I call him back the next day. I'm at JB's house, my sister's house. And I'm in shock, you know, I'm in shock. I couldn't find my dad, I don't know where he was. And I called him. I said, Mr. Wiley, he said, hey, Sweet Pea, how you doing? I said, man, I'm hanging in there, man. It's tough. I don't have no clothes. I don't have nothing. He said, Sweet Pea, we had an emergency meeting, and this is what we're going to do for you. And I'm going to stop after this, Art. We're going to give you a $1,200 check so you can get some new clothes. And in 1972, 73, $1,200 sounded like $1 million. They said, we're going to pay your tuition for the next 2 years. And then they said, we're going to give you a job here. So after school, after classes, you're going to work and earn you some spending money. And then they helped me get into not the SAT, but they helped me with my college applications. And I got a full scholarship to college. And the rest is history. And that's how I got started, man. And I try to get through this story every time, Art, without falling apart, but it's just a blessing. And that's why I get so disturbed when people come and they don't know your story and they say horrible things about you. And they talk about my mom or talk about the roles. And we got to stop that, man. This is not an easy life to get through, man. We live in some real weird times. But that's how I got started, Art. And then I went to Emerson, got a full scholarship. And then I kicked around in Boston, and that's how I got started. And if it wasn't for Peggy Cooper Cafritz, Charles Brown, Glenda Dickerson, and later years I was homeless and I was homeless in New York and ended up living with Glenda, who was my teacher. She took me in. But Charles Brown, Glenda Dickerson, Peggy Cooper Cafritz, Charles Organs, Skipper Driscoll, Clyde Barrett, I wouldn't be here. I know I wouldn't be here. I don't know what I would have been. I probably would have, I told my nephew, my cousin drove city bus. I said, I'm gonna be a bus driver. I didn't even know what college was. My guy asked me if I want to go to college in my junior year. I was like, what do you do there? So when I take my story, so I'm writing my book called Angels by My Side. I'm gonna do my movie. But I'm just so grateful, man. Because I never saw this, man. And when I walk in, somebody be like, that's the icon. That's Clifton Powell. That's Cuddy. That's Pinky. That's Chauncey. He played Martin Luther King. That was the guy from Ray. I'm just so honored. I'm honored to my agents, my managers, all the independent filmmakers who've hired me. People like Robbie Reed, who hired me in the early years. My dear friend, Rose Catherine Pinckney. Oz Scott, it's so many names. Steve Ferrier, who walked with me, Swirl Films, Eric Thomas Sunas, Keith Neal. It's been a village that have helped me. My friend Kathy Colin, who in the early days when I had no money, made sure I ate. And I'm sure I'm leaving like some of my high school friends who've supported me, everything I've done. it's again, man, even sitting right here, man, it's like being inside of a dream. And I never in my life thought I would be an inspiration, man, to anybody other than just cutting up and acting goofy. And I'm just so grateful that at least 97% of the people enjoy my work. And I want people to understand. That's why we wanted to come on here to get some closure and to understand the journey that I've gone through. And it's all a blessing. And I think it's a miracle, man, because I don't know how I got here, but I didn't quit. And I'll say this and stop. All you need, faith the size of a mustard seed. And if I can do it, you can do it. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you've been through. I'm a witness that if you stick with it, try to be good to people, and I am not perfect, you're gonna make it. You're gonna be successful. And it's discipline, it's hard work. One guy said, I thought all you did was party and chase girls. I said, how you like me now? Because he used to go up for the roles and I get him, he'd be mad at me. I'm like, don't be mad at me. When in between all of that, I was doing my work. And it's just a blessing, man. So I want to thank you again for having me. I didn't mean to break down. I could never get through that story, Art, because I didn't even want to be in the program. But I think sometimes when God's got a plan for you, you just got to kind of go with it and move out the way, man. So I appreciate everybody out there. I know there may be some more questions you have, Art, but that's my story. And if you hear my story, don't tell me what you can't do. It's faith is the key. And I'm just glad. I want to give a shout out to my dear friend, God rest his soul, and his mom. I should have mentioned in my story. To all my friends in Mayfair and their moms and dads who helped raise me, my teachers at Neville Thomas. But I want to give a shout out to my buddy who passed on. His name is Daryl Harvey, and his mom, Imogene Johnson, and his sister Cheryl. Daryl Harvey took me under his wings in the middle of the roughest hood when I was 7 years old. And he was the toughest guy in my neighborhood. Only one guy from Mayfair could cross the street into Parkside after 6 o'clock. And that was the guy who helped raise me. And he walked with me until I became a man. So his mom used to take me in when I was scared at night, because my dad worked midnight. So I was home by myself at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I was only like 7, 8, 9, 10. I said, I told my dad, and I think I said in the last podcast, my babysitter had rats. So at 6 and 7, I'm being at their house when my dad went to work. The rats was like in the living room. And I told my dad, I said, if we move, I don't want a babysitter. So I was by myself at 7 years old. But luckily I had Daryl. I had his mom, Miss Imogene Johnson. And I had the people in my neighborhood who helped raise me. And for that, I'm so grateful. It's a lot, Art. People got to do their research. You got to do your research. You got to go look at the TV series called Hollywood. You got to read about Marilyn Monroe, read about, get this book called Toms, Bucks, Mammies, and Mulattoes, about the experience of Black Hollywood. It's by Donald Bogle. Go read about Dorothy Dandridge and what she went through. Hollywood is just a microcosm. The hashtag #MeToo rules have changed a lot. We got to keep doing better, but I'm never going to sit here and bash Hollywood. I'm not going to bash America. We got to just keep trying to do better. Whoever's, involved in some of the things that we're hearing about, they got to be prosecuted. Can't hurt children. Any country that hurts their children or their elders, it's not a good thing, man. And I'll say something real quickly about racism. I played Dr. Martin Luther King, and he had a quote. He said, if we don't learn to live together as brothers, we are going to perish together as fools. And I think we got to keep that in mind, because racism is on the rise. We're seeing them get rid of DEI programs, which only means diversity and inclusion. He just took Dr. King's picture and put it in the trash or put it in another part of the White House or got rid of it altogether. We got to do better. And I pray that America does do better. I appreciate everybody out there. This has been a little emotional for me, Art. because but I really take my hat off to you, man. You do your research and you ask the important questions, you know? But I want the young people, the young artists, if you have a dream, don't quit. And tell them I told you. To my kids, I got to shout out my family, my friends, my nieces, my nephews, to Clifton and Maya, to Keita B, to Malik, Christian, Rashad Jr., Eliza, my aunts, my uncles, my nieces and nephews in Chicago. I got to give y'all a shout out. We got talk about some of the things we got coming up to our. The one thing we have is called Sundays After Church. It's coming on Apple TV and the Indie Tubi platform. I think that's March the 2nd. So go check that out. I'm playing a politician in that. My man Cinnamon Brown out of the DMV in the Richmond area. Shout out to him and his team. The director, his wife, and the whole team were wonderful. Again, one of my DMV brothers. I'm gonna give a shout out to another one of my DMV brothers, Brian Thompson, who put me in, Tim Reed out in that area. The other movie I have coming out is Waka Flocka's mom's story called Deb is Boss. Of course, y'all all know Waka Flocka's mom is Miss Deb Ante. I personally want to give Miss Deb Ante a shout out because she insisted that I be in this movie. And the name of the movie is called Deb is Boss. Little Mama is playing Deb Ante. I play her dad, and Lisa Ray plays her mother. It's going to be on an all-black network. I think it's March 5th. Y'all go out, check it out, make it a hit. And don't send me no comments about the character I'm playing. It's a true story. I'm working on a piece about these counterfeiters, and I'm building a movie platform. And I got a buyer for my first movie. I'm so excited. I have about 7 movies that I want to do and up the ante on the quality and the storylines. And I'm just grateful to all my fans out there, no matter what gender, no matter what color, no matter what race, no matter where the hell you're from. I just appreciate you supporting everything I do. And to the young artists out there, don't tell me what you can't do.